Warning, there will be spoilers on this show.
It's considered Canada's greatest slasher movie ever. I'm Dan Lawson, and I'm your host.
I'm Scott Cornell, and I'm your host.
This is a scary movie review.
Welcome to today's episode. What are we watching today, Dan?
Happy birthday to me.
It's your birthday?
No, not at all.
So this is our first listener requested review.
Jamie sent us a message through Facebook, and Happy Birthday to Me was a movie she had seen when she was younger, and it had stuck with her. So it is our first listener request review.
Perfect. And it's from the 80s. 1981 was the release date. It was rated R, but potentially would have had that X rating based on that one scene that was cut. And it has that 80s vibe of all
Very
those
much.
80 films.
Has that just the grittiness in the dark. It has that the grain from the camera.
Very challenging to recreate in modern times.
Yes,
I think the timelessness.
definitely the crown of slasher movies.
So let's get right into this. So the story is about...
It's about a snobby academy for teenagers, and it takes place around this girl Virginia's birthday, and a tragic incident that happened in the past, and all of her friends, one by one, disappearing.
the top 10, they call themselves.
The top 10, the cool kids, the cool rich kids are the top 10.
So it's this elite group, and they all hang out. On the way to the bar, one of the friends, the first person that dies in this film, she's on her way walking, and it has that, there's always that in the 80s, the creeper looking through a window, or the creeper, like you're seeing the eyes view of the...
Right, that first person lurking.
Yeah,
Always
the lurking. Yeah, they did that a lot in this film.
They really did.
Which I enjoy. Like, it's that... And it's really badly done, too, in the earlier movies. Like, modern movies, they stabilize the camera a lot better. Right. They make it more professional. But back then, it's like they just stuck a camera on a guy's head and just, like, he's just shaking his head around like crazy. Right. And you're thinking, how is he even possibly seeing over these items that are stuck right in front of him? They did this very often in this film. And I enjoyed it. It had that creeper effect. So they started with that on the first kill in the car. She's starting her car up. And if you notice, she was wearing like these leather gloves, which later in the film, everyone's wearing these kind of leather gloves to allude to who's the killer.
Right. You kind of get the sense that you see that the killer's wearing the leather gloves. So you're like, I'm going to look who's wearing the leather gloves. And then everyone's wearing leather gloves.
Yep. And they did that a lot. Leather gloves and the scarves.
Yeah.
Like wearing a scarf. So the first girl that gets killed, she has leather gloves on the steering wheel. And I noticed that right away, thinking, oh, that's kind of weird. And then the killer had leather gloves. So they were even trying to trick you in the beginning with the girl that got killed had leather gloves. Maybe she's still the killer killing herself. It was a conundrum.
Yeah, it was in movies... In general, the general rule is the person who they try to make look like the killer is never the killer. But they kind of individually made everyone look like that's the guy. Yeah. That's the killer. And then that person would die.
Over and over.
Over and over. And I had my solid theories. And then the guy would die. Or girl.
They also alluded to the killer being one of their friends because they would say, it's you.
They always knew who it was.
They always knew them. Or Greg, while he was working out, so he was doing the bench press, which is also a fun kill. So he's working out, and he says, oh, come on in. I'm waiting for Amelia, or one of the other girls. So you automatically know it's not Amelia, but then you're thinking, well, who is it? Which one of the friends is it? And you know it's one of the top 10 at that point.
Right.
And they allude to that very often, that it's definitely one of the friends in the group. So back to the working out scene.
Yes.
So
That
he's
that
bench
was
pressing.
horrible.
Yeah,
Horrible.
and not following any type of workout etiquette. I'm not a guy that works out, but I know some of the rules,
Some of the safety gym rules.
safety gym rules,
Right.
and etiquette. And you don't stack a 25 on a 5.
Right.
You got to take that 5 off and
Well,
stack the biggest to smallest.
And when you're working out for a while already, you don't just throw another 50 on.
No.
That's a lot of weight.
Dude was going for his max that day.
Right.
So they take the weight, the killer takes the weight and drops it right on his crotch. And instead of dropping the bar backwards or throwing the bar to the left or the right, the guy goes straight down on his own neck.
Right.
Just insta-kill. Bad choice of maneuvering that weight. Early in the film, they highlight this bridge scenario. It's one of those old drawbridge. So it's going up, and they play a game almost of chicken, where they would run across the bridge with their vehicles. One of the guys on like a moped or a scooter. Yeah. The other people are in their cars, and they're just jumping across one by one, trying to clear it. One of the cars goes a little too late,
and just completely just like hits and just destroys the front of the car and then the back of the car. And then in the next scene, it's pristine. But just for a second, it's one of those things you have to catch it, because just for a second in the background, the car's pristine.
It's a little Easter egg.
Yeah. Love them.
Some of the 80s themes that I noticed in this movie were the cassette player. When she's getting ready for bed,
yes,
she pops in a cassette. I like that, kind of the throwback.
I love. You have to be careful in movies that you don't date movies too much, but at the same time, like those little throwbacks are always kind of sweet.
It is fun, and it'd be interesting not to know what she's doing too. Like if you never used a cassette tape,
right?
Like what is she doing? Like what is that thing she's putting in this other thing to play music? This doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because when people, the further we get in technology, and the older the young people get, they're not going to have any idea what that is.
Yeah, you lose touch with it. You almost might think, man, that's something from the future.
Yeah. Right.
What is that device she's using? I've never seen one of those. It has to be the future. They do this also, the shower scene, or her undressing first, and Etienne, the French guy, staring through the closet. I feel that was an 80s type of, you'd always get some kind of sexually charged scenes like that, or like the killer watching the woman undress and then her taking a shower.
They're like peering first person, doing that first person creeper kind of angle. Melissa Anderson actually took time off of Little House on the Prairie, which she plays Mary Ingalls. She actually took time off of recording Little House on the Prairie so she could star in this movie. Mary Ingalls in this movie, her name is Virginia. Her dad calls her Jenny. And one of the things that really made this movie great is the twist ending. And this is actually considered in the horror genre one of the best twist endings ever recorded. The movie takes place prior to Virginia's birthday and dealing with some of the trauma that she went through prior to her birthday. So originally, she was supposed to be the killer. That was the original idea when they set out, was because of this trauma that she went through when she was young during her birthday. It's now her birthday again. She went through this whole brain operation, regrowth, guinea pig experiment, and things didn't go well. So now she's a psychopath and she's offing all of these kids. But as good as that sounds, the writers assumed everyone's just going to see this. So instead of just playing it out, they went ahead and let you assume that, but then they threw in the twist.
Yeah. And it worked.
It definitely worked.
No, it worked really well. I believe it would have worked both ways. If they would have left her as the killer there at the end, it could have been a good ending.
I think it still would have been a really well-written movie.
Yeah, it didn't need to have that double twist.
Right.
Where you're like, oh wait, she is the killer, and then you're like, wait, no, she's not the killer. This other lady's the killer. Another one of the deaths and how they linked each character into you believing that potentially they are the killer was Etienne, the dirt bike riding guy. He's trying to hit on Virginia, and Alfred is watching this whole scenario play out. And they both kind of have like this moment where Alfred's staring at him and Etienne's like, what are you staring at? And then it leads right into the next scene where Etienne's working on his dirt bike in his garage and someone's coming in to see, or kind of somebody's creeping in, lurking in on him to eventually kill him. But they tie it together where you think it's Alfred. Like just by default, he has this confrontation with him, and then now he's in the garage ready to kill him. And they did that a lot. They did that with Rudy. They led into that with Rudy after he plays the soccer game. There's a flower bed with a bunch of fresh soil out, and there's like a scarf laying there, and he tucks it in. He
tucks it in and he covers it up with dirt.
Yeah, before he goes into the chapel to meet with Virginia. And they were trying to like throw your scent off of the true killer, which at that point you had no idea who the true killer was, or even who you thought it was. And they were just constantly throwing you a new bone of like, hey, maybe it's this guy, maybe it's this guy. The chapel scene where she's upstairs in the chapel, that was a little odd to me because later it explains all these blackouts that Virginia was having.
Yeah.
They explain it, that the killer was knocking her out with some sort of
chloroform or something.
Whatever it is. But they don't explain the bell tower because Rudy's in the bell tower with the knife.
Yeah.
And he wants to cut the rope. The bell ringer comes in later and sees the blood on the ground and the rope rips off. So he cut the rope. Virginia, when she sees him later again, because she thinks she killed him.
Yeah.
She was telling the doctor that she killed him. But that blackout moment just kind of further emphasized all the other blackout moments that Virginia was having. So she couldn't distinguish between reality and kind of this fantasy made up world. And maybe it was the drugs like the chloroform that were messing with her head, but she also had trauma from that accident where she had this brain surgery. There's just, to me, there was still a little bit of loose ends with certain scenes, and
it kind of was. Yeah. And you could tell that it was written originally where Virginia was supposed to be. And then when they decided to curveball it, they kind of didn't go back and tie up all the loose ends to the new ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that. I could feel some of that. Virginia's mom, Estelle, has this idea of being rich, being powerful, and impressing her friends.
Right. Yeah, the other...
Can you call them friends at that point? If it's
the
just
other
people,
academy parents.
Yeah, academy parents. The prestige, high class at Crawford Academy. And she wants to have this perfect birthday party for her daughter, which is Virginia. She tells Virginia to invite all her friends over, and nobody shows up. They all go to Anne's birthday party.
Yes.
And that kind of starts the chaos of her mom going crazy.
Completely breaking down.
Just wanting to give her child this perfect birthday gift. Her dad's not there. Virginia's dad's not there. The mom's really angry about that. Making Virginia call her dad, talk to him on the phone. I think she calls him a bastard at some point.
Yeah.
It's a really, really bad relationship. And then drives over to Anne's house trying to get Virginia to this party. And I don't know if you've ever had your mom do some crazy stuff for you, but it just reminds me of like when I was a kid, just some of the things like parents do for their children.
Yeah.
Where they don't realize like it's detrimental
how
to
damaging it is to
like I'm going to drag you to this birthday party, drop you off. They didn't want you here in the first place, but I'm going to make those people invite you.
Right.
be your friend. I'm going to make them be your friend. And that's what she was kind of doing.
Yeah.
And I think she came from a background of maybe poverty, because she says something on the lines of, now I'm rich, or now I've made it. And this alludes to later the affair that, and this is the big spoiler, I'm going to do the big reveal right now, but this alludes to the affair that Estelle had with Anne's father, which then creates Virginia, this love child, which is actually Anne's half sister.
Right.
So draw that out. That's a little confusing, but so that's the whole motivation of this situation, is that Virginia's mother kind of ruins Anne's life because Anne's mom leaves her dad.
Yeah.
After this whole affair. It's kind of interesting that you said they added this later. Like they kind of changed the dynamic of the movie to add this. And I wonder if like the scene where she's going up trying to get her daughter invited to the party was in the first kind of right of the movie. And then, because it fits well.
I would say it was, because the whole traumatic thing has to happen, and the mom has to die, and Virginia has to have the brain surgery to set up for the fact that the brain surgery didn't go well, and now she's a psychopath.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably in the original cut of the movie.
But is she a psychopath?
I don't think so. I think she's just convinced herself that, because she keeps blacking out and waking up and people are dead.
Yeah.
So you make the automatic assumption, well, this experimental brain surgery didn't go well, and now she's killing her friends.
And she has these blackouts. So when she's
Yeah.
chloroformed, if that's a verb, she has these kind of vivid dreams of her memory that she's forgotten from the surgery, and flashbacks of how she got to where she is today.
Yeah.
And David, the doctor, which you believed was the killer,
100% was sold.
So
he was the killer up until the minute his head splattered.
Yeah.
He was the killer.
And you believe David was the killer, but David's in her life kind of coaching her through these events. And she's telling him, oh, I killed this person, I did these bad things. And he's saying, no, you're just dealing with your trauma. And he's trying to link her trauma with her friend group.
Right.
And he concludes that the bridge, the drawbridge,
where they jumped it,
when they jumped it, is the connection.
Was the connection. But he didn't know about the previous birthday, and the reason she freaked out about the drawbridge was because that's how her mom died.
Yeah. And she visits her mom's grave very often. And the dad and Virginia kind of have this interesting relationship too, because the dad gets angry at her for going to the gravesite.
Yeah, that was kind of never explained. Like why he would be that upset. Because he was very, very upset. And you could tell by what he said that this is something that she's done repeatedly in the past, and he always overreacts to it.
Yeah. It wasn't explained.
But then that was another kind of loose end that seemed like a big deal. It seemed like it was going to have some sort of significance, and then didn't.
Maybe it's 80s relationship drama. Maybe today you just get divorced and end a relationship. And in the 80s, you just held on.
Yeah, you
just hated
fought
each other
through it and
yeah,
lived in misery and became an alcoholic. And
yeah, maybe that's what they were trying to demonstrate, which was normal back then.
Very well could be.
Yeah, but he's kind of an absent father too, which is highlighted when they call him on her birthday, her first birthday, flashback birthday, and then also this year's birthday, the current present time in the film's current birthday, where he has to leave on a business trip or there's some kind of emergency within his line of work where he has to leave town. He ends up coming back and making it in time for her birthday, which is the big reveal to the insanity. He gets home, sees blood from the doctor's murder in the bedroom, thinks the worst. He doesn't know what happened, so he goes running outside. It's raining. He heads to the graveyard, which I didn't realize was on their property. They kind of don't really show that or explain that kind of like geographical location.
But it's kind of like through their backyard.
Yeah, he walks to the grave, and one of Virginia's friends is at the grave with a gift in her hand. And this also wasn't really explained.
Yeah, I kind of feel that one was kind of the scene where I sort of want to go back and watch the movie again just to get a grasp on what that was all about.
Yeah, that one was odd. So that was one of, I believe it was Amelia was the friend's name, but it was her standing at the grave, the mother's grave, just staring. The dad comes over, kind of turns her around. She's looking at him like, doesn't say a word, just zoned out, almost like she was dead, but she was not dead, and has a gift in the hand. I believe it said happy birthday. Then the dad keeps walking away, finds a casket where the mother was buried, goes to the party house where the first birthday occurred. Again, the space and time, to me, the distances, it just seemed weird. I didn't realize that birthday house was right there at the graveyard. Right. So he walks over there, goes in, and all the dead friends are lined up or sitting around the table. And the mother's also sitting there.
That was dug up.
The dead mother, yeah. And with the maggots.
I wonder if that wasn't just a product of poor editing, because originally Amelia was supposed to be axe murdered. But that scene was cut because the way it was done, it would have given the movie an X rating.
Interesting.
So they cut that scene to bring it down to an R. So I wonder if she showed up to the party thinking, because there was actually originally, there was supposed to be a real birthday party. And I wonder if she showed up to the birthday party with a present and she's seen this horrible scene of all of her dead friends. And that's the reason she was standing outside, kind of mortified with a blank look, holding a present. And she was supposed to get axe murdered, and they cut that out, where they really should have just cut her completely out, because it just leaves you. Because I'm guessing, I don't know that that's a fact.
No, that's a good guess, though. That solidifies it in my mind. I'm happy with that answer. You solved it for me. That's enough.
You're welcome.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I always love those little pieces of things that you miss or kind of bring up questions. Like they made a big deal. What was the kid's name that looked like Radar, that was wearing the beanie and he had the pet mouse?
Oh, Alfred.
So there's a scene in the beginning where Alfred, which is he's kind of the odd friend, but he has a pet rat. And they kind of make a big deal about this pet rat. Rat's name is George. And I was like, I wonder if that's a callback or a wink to Of Mice and Men. If you've read Of Mice and Men. If not, this is just a hook to get you to read Mice and Men. It's a tiny book. You can read it in an afternoon. But the mice and George will tie together.
Oh, okay. You're going to leave us hanging with that.
I'm leaving everybody hanging on the fact that every adult in their life should have read Of Mice and Men.
Great book.
It's a great book. It's very well written. For I would say 95% of the book, it was painfully boring. And I didn't understand why it was such a classic until like the last 3 pages, and I cried like a tiny baby.
Maybe we'll review that scary movie next.
Yeah.
Of Mice and Men.
They did actually make a movie about it.
Is it scary?
I don't think it's scary.
Oh, dang it. You brought up Alfred being kind of the outcast. One of the other highlights or important parts he was in this film was he was a taxidermist, and he was also into making fake latex masks.
Like props.
Replicas of the Friends, which is kind of strange.
That
First
in
of all,
itself was very creepy.
yeah.
That's another thing that I understand the point of that scene, but it felt like it was so big. It should have been more. And then it was just like a haha and never mentioned again.
And you're talking about when they break into his apartment.
When they break into his apartment
and find the head of the first murder victim sitting there on his counter. Yeah, it was oddly acted out too, purposely done, obviously, to lead into, oh, he's the killer, he's going to kill these two. But then it's kind of like, oh, this is fake. I'm going to pop out this eyeball out of this fake head sitting on my table.
Which even as a fake head, I feel like when they popped the eyeball out, it had all like the head guts.
Yes.
In the eyes. Like I was like,
yeah.
This guy is clearly not okay anyway.
Well, and that was Anne and Virginia at the apartment. So Anne was the killer. So she knew, obviously, Alfred isn't the killer. And Virginia, I think, is just cracked out on craziness that she had no clue what was going on. She's like, this is fine.
Yeah.
Whatever.
One little fun fact along with the mouse is the surgeon in the movie that is doing Virginia's brain surgery, and they cut her skull open. The actor that was doing the brain surgery was actually a neurosurgeon in real life.
That was a tough scene to watch for me.
It kind of was a tough scene to watch.
I'm not a big fan of like skulls being opened and seeing the skull
and they like flap it open, and
yeah,
it was definitely a tough scene to watch.
It makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then she was awake during that surgery too, which is a thing.
Yeah. So yeah, in real life, when they do brain surgeries, you have to stay awake because it's such a delicate surgery. They can't afford to put you under because you could easily die. So yeah, when they do brain surgery on you in real life, they keep you awake.
And that's the kind of true to life scenarios you get by hiring a brain surgeon,
right?
To pretend to be a brain surgeon.
I'm sure that's what it was.
He said, "Wait a second, we got to do this the real way." What did you think was your favorite scene in the whole movie?
See, as I was watching it, I was thinking, Scott's going to ask me what my favorite scene is.
There's got to be a favorite scene. I got one.
Do you have a favorite scene? What is, Scott, what is your favorite scene?
My favorite scene was when the mom is drunk and driving with Virginia to go to that house, and they're crossing the drawbridge, and they fall down into the water. They showed the car falling into the water like 6 times from different angles. It was like one of those like Incredible Hulk. I don't know if you ever watched that TV show.
Oh, I loved the Incredible Hulk.
Like I feel like they did that a lot, like showing the same scene over and over from different angles, just so you understand it 100%.
Or Jean-Claude Van Damme kicking somebody.
Yes. Yeah. That's my favorite. That was my favorite scene in this. I don't know why, but it was just kind of humorous because I don't know if they filmed it multiple times or if they had that many cameras set up at once. I imagine they had that many cameras, but in the 80s, cameras weren't like they are today where they're basically throwaway. They were very expensive.
Yeah. And you ran film. It just wasn't digital recording.
Yeah, so 6 cameras versus 6 cars. I don't know what would have been cheaper in the 80s.
Yeah, I do have to say when they were going across the bridge and she slams on her brake and she stops with 2 wheels on one side and 2 wheels on the other side, that was probably, of all the good shock scares in the movie and just like surprise elements, I think that's the one that was just like, because I've seen so many drawbridge scenes in so many different movies that I was just like, oh, like that one like really caught me when you just like the camera backed off and she was like a little bit on both sides because you're just like, well, they're screwed. And now you just got to like sit and wait for it to happen.
Are those things automated or is there not a controller guy?
There's a controller guy in the booth.
So you don't think he saw the car like hanging?
Right.
Suspended?
Yeah.
I mean, come on now.
Yeah.
Everything else was real except that.
Yeah.
That one part. Another 80s special effect that I enjoyed was when they were in science class and he was charging up the static electricity on his teacher.
Yes.
And then he taps him on the nose.
And and there's like that like hard white line drawing of the
lightning bolt.
Of the lightning bolt. Yeah, that was great. And also in that scene when the teacher goes to show the electrical shock on the frog, they clearly did not try to hide the wires underneath the frog legs that would cause the frog legs to jump when it was electrocuted. Didn't even attempt to get like a good angle. There were just clearly holes in the bottom of the platform and wires sticking out, pushing the frog legs.
Not so special.
That was not so special effects.
Yes, not so special effects. Overall, I really enjoyed the movie. I would say I really enjoyed the aspects of it. I haven't watched an 80s film for a long time, and it was a real throwback to when I was a kid, working at a video store, going to the video store to rent movies. This one, the cover, was such a throwback.
I loved the color. You know, on the cover of this movie and a lot of the marketing, there is a picture of a guy getting stabbed in the mouth with a shish kebab, which did in fact happen in the movie. But the line on all of the marketing material, as well as the cover, was John will never eat a shish kebab again. There was no one in the movie named John.
Yeah. It was Steve. Steve was the guy that got murdered. Interesting. I wonder if they changed his name or if it was just random John.
Yeah, and then they never went back and changed the marketing stuff because, you know, they put out all this marketing stuff and they have all this done well before the movie's ever edited.
Yeah.
And if they went back and changed his name,
that would make sense.
That would make sense.
So, Dan, do we have any other interesting facts that you think are relevant to this movie?
Probably the most relevant fact about this movie is it is still to this day considered Canada's greatest slasher film.
43 years later.
That's a good run.
That is a great run. All right, as always, we have to talk about a sequel, if a sequel ever came out of this movie.
I don't know how there could be. I mean...
Well, Anne dies, so the killer dies. The Virginia is now standing there with a knife, just killed Anne, and the policeman walks in, and Virginia's basically framed for all the murders.
Which were Anne... Yeah, Anne had framed her for all of them anyway, and now she's standing there with the knife. So that just kind of seals the deal that, oh, well, clearly she did do all these because there's nobody else dependent on at this point.
So there could not be a part two, unless it was a flashback movie based on her mom's life. This is a totally impossible. It's not happening.
It's not happening.
Happy birthday to me too. That's a catchy title.
It is.
They need to do it. So we're going to review this also and kind of go through the rating scale of what we believed this film deserves. So we're going to go through and give our movie a Killer Bunny score. The score is out of a maximum of 40 points. So the best top is going to be 40 points. The worst is going to be 0. So each category is going to be from 0 to 10, 4 different categories with a maximum score of 40 points. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, just Google how scoring works.
Math is hard.
Get your calculator out and play along with us. So right now we're going to go through it and we're going to look at the acting and the character development in this movie and how we connected with them. For me watching it, there was too many characters. Like
there was a lot of friends. There was a lot of side characters.
Especially researching it for what we're trying to do here and do a review.
Yes.
Tracking names, tracking characters. Some of the girls kind of looked similar. Not exact, but they didn't distinguish them enough. And I didn't feel any connection to them, which is okay in a slasher killer film because they were going through, 6 people, 7 people got killed by the end. Almost 10 people were killed. So in a 2-hour movie, it's hard to get any character development. The only relationship I felt was to Virginia And that was just the craziness of going through trauma and feeling like every day is confusing.
Yeah, and it kind of felt like the more she remembered, the more she knew, the more confused she became.
Yeah.
So that did show, I think, good development throughout. Because in the beginning, she was just this happy-go-lucky girl, and she was going through this trauma. But yeah, the more she learned, and the more she remembered from her past, then the more confused she got, and the more scared she was. So that I thought had really good development.
I think so too. I would probably say from 0 to 10, I'd probably say a 7, 6 or 7.
Yeah, I'm going about 6.5.
Yeah.
It her development was really well done, but there really wasn't a lot of development in the other characters. It was all that time was spent on red herrings.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed the production value of the movie. You have to keep in mind that it was done in 1981, so you didn't have any CG, you didn't have all of the movie technology we have now. So you really only had those hand-built practical effects. And if you even go back to Albert's apartment where he had the girl's head, for a prosthetic head, it looked really good. There was a lot of detail and separation and like the face and the lips. A lot of times when you have prosthetic heads, the lips and the eyelids look sealed together. So I thought production wise, for a 1981 movie, I thought they did a really good job. I would say for an early 80s, I'm going to rate it an 8.
I would also agree. Eight's a good score on that one. The originality of the plot, to me, was very, well, again, this was 80s, but it was just a standard killer slasher.
What was your standard slasher?
Yeah. Not bad, but it was average. It followed the same rules. It followed the same mysteries. I wasn't surprised by anything except the ending.
The ending had
the twist,
a monumental twist, and I did enjoy the fact that the writers had the foresight to see that their original plan was going to be very, very scripted, and they actually went back and was able to rewrite things and kind of change things up. I feel like in a lot of movies, especially now, there's so much put into the production value that things just are what they are, and it feels a little bit lazy. So from that aspect, I appreciate the fact that they had the foresight to say, this is a little cliche, even for its time, and go back and rewrite.
No, that was smart. I think if that was the standard plot and she was the killer, the originality would be like a 2 or a 3.
Yeah.
I think the twist definitely spiced it up a little bit for me. So I'm going to go with an 8. I really like the ending. I love movies that just keep me guessing. And then at the end, here's the reveal. But wait, there's more. Actually, she's wearing a latex mask and she's this other girl.
Yeah. I watch a ridiculous amount of movies. And to be so confused and so lost the entire movie, I'm going to give it an 8.5.
Nice. So Dan, if you had friends to recommend this to, would you recommend it to those imaginary friends?
If I had friends, I would definitely suggest that they watch this movie with a group of people. I feel like this would be a good movie to sit down with a group of friends trying to figure out what happened, the whodunit aspect of the movie. I would definitely recommend this movie to a group of friends.
Yeah, it was good. I would agree with you. I would definitely recommend it. I'm glad Jamie recommended it to us.
Absolutely.
I think that's neat. I'd never heard of this
I don't know how.
time.
I don't know how. I've never heard of this movie. It's, for the last 40 years, considered Canada's greatest slasher movie. And with the volume of movies that I watch, that I just didn't even accidentally stumble upon this movie.
I do remember the box cover, though. I vaguely remember that, but I did not know the name of it. So when I looked it up, when you mentioned it to me, I was like, oh yes. Like I remember seeing this when I was 12 years old, like the box art. So I was pretty excited about that. I'd probably recommend it to somebody that's interested or that enjoys these kind of slasher films, murder mystery films, because it did keep you guessing till the end, and it would be fun to watch with a group of friends. Now that we've spoiled the whole movie for you, probably
Absolutely.
not as much, but hopefully you watched it last week when we told you to. I would probably say an 8 or 9.
Yeah.
8.5.
31.5 out of 40.
Next week, we will be reviewing Attack of the Killer Donuts from 2016, directed by Scott Wheeler.
I'm Scott Cornell.
And I'm Dan Lawson. This has been a Scary Movie Review. Until next time.
Stay horrible.